Alright everybody, welcome back to our next video from SB Outdoors. So, this is one of those videos we've been meaning to talk about.
Long awaited.
Kevin and I are lucky enough between the both of us to own 3 different underquilts, both by 3 different popular underquilt manufacturers. So in this video we're going to go through those 3 different underquilts, talk about some of the pros and cons of them, show them what they look like on the hammock, and go over the specs, so that when you're looking to get your first hammock and your first underquilt, you know,
the underquilt showdown.
The underquilt showdown. You can decide what you like. So the first underquilt we're going to cover is the Enlightened Equipment Revolt. So this is my personal underquilt. Oh, I've had this for almost a year now, and it's my first and only underquilt I've owned. So the Enlightened Equipment Revolt uses an 850 fill down tech treated down. Mine weighs about 19 ounces. I got the long version in 20 degree. I'm 6'1", so I wanted a nice long.
You're 6'2". You're cheating yourself.
I'm honestly 6'1".
Yeah. I say 6'2", but I'm like 6'1.75.
Yeah,
anyway.
6'1". I wanted a long one. I didn't want to screw around with any potential cold spots. I just didn't want to deal with that. So when you order from Enlightened Equipment, if you have one custom made for you, there's tons of different color options for you to choose from, which is pretty common in the cottage industry when you're ordering custom gear. Like most of the other underquilts out there on the market, it uses a shock cord suspension system. Right now, they're about 45 inches wide, and the long version is about 75 inches long.
Alright, so we're working our way lightest to heaviest here. Next up is the Hammock Gear Incubator 20. So all of these underquilts are 20 degree underquilts. Hammock Gear is a local company for us. It is 78 inches long, so slightly longer than the Revolt. 44 inches wide, which is a common width for underquilts, and comes in at about 21 ounces, so a couple ounces heavier than the Revolt. The one thing that we both really like about this underground quilt is the baffle system is run longitudinally, whereas the Revolt kind of has this pocket baffle system.
And additionally, on the Hammock Gear one, they're actually tapered too.
Yeah, so the Hammock Gear is cut, and we'll show this. I'll throw a little clip up right now. It's cut to be wider where your butt and shoulders is, and then thinner where your feet are, and it works out really well. So that's the Hammock Gear Incubator 20. Lastly, we have the first underquilt I ever had, the Underground Quilts Zeppelin 20 degree underquilt, and that's an 800 fill underquilt, also a 20 degree underquilt. It's also 77 inches long, same width as the other one. Also has the longitudinally cut baffle system, and both the Zeppelin and the Incubator both have draft collars, which the Revolt does not.
The Revolt's more of like a minimalistic, in my opinion, underquilt. It doesn't have the pack hooks on the side like some of the other underquilts have. It doesn't have draft collars, and that's where a lot of, I think, your weight savings is.
Alright, so we're going to throw these up on the hammock, and we'll show you what they look like, and we'll kind of go through some of the features of them.
Alright, so we got the Enlightened Equipment Revolt on the Dutchware Chameleon right now. One thing that is easily noticeable is the shock cord suspension fits in the pack hooks just fine. So that's pretty standard with the shock cord suspension. Just like the other underquilts we're going to show you, it's got the primary suspension where you can adjust the underquilt on where it is on the suspension, and then you've got a secondary style suspension that will cinch it closed against the hammock to help prevent any drafts from getting underneath it. The unique thing about the Enlightened Equipment Revolt compared to the other underquilts is it's got more of a grid baffle system. I think Enlightened Equipment refers to that as a K-row system or something like that, but that's just one of the differences. The baffles are not these long vertical or horizontal baffles. Instead, you got this grid system.
We're gonna try the snap trick. Put on the next one. All right, we lost Andy in that magical thing. All right, so next up, this is the Hammock Gear Incubator 20. I've got the head end down here and the foot end down here. You can see it's cut, so like your butt's right here. You'll notice the baffles run this way versus Andy's were kind of like clumped together. It does have draft collars right on the inside, so I have a Moroccan blue on the inside. So you have a primary suspension right here, which will determine how far up the underquilt is. You have a secondary suspension right here, which will slide the hammock along that primary suspension. And then I call it tertiary suspension, but people don't call it that. It's this one right here. So that will determine how tight the area where the draft collars is. And this is where, if you're using this thing in 20 degrees or if you're using this thing in 60 degrees, you're gonna modulate how open this area is. That'll vent your underquilt. It's a great underquilt. It is one thing I will say about this, and I've heard about some of Hammock Gear's other products, is their down, wherever they get their down from, if this down gets a little wet, you do get a very animalistic, gamey smell. It's not bad. You only smell it if you like get up in there, but yeah, you can tell it's animal feathers because when it gets wet, it smells like animal. So this is the Hammock Gear Incubator 20, and let's throw on the Underquilt Zeppelin 20. Try it again. Okay, we've got the third and final underquilt here. This is the Underquilt Zeppelin 20 degree, the first underquilt I got. Right away, you can see how much more bulkier it is than the Revolt and the Hammock Gear underquilts. It's just bigger, it takes up more space, and it weighs a couple ounces more. But with that size comes luxury. I mean, it is, you can see how much loft is in there. And on top of that, it's kind of made of this really heavy duty nylon on the outside. So it's a lot more, feels a lot more durable than the other underquilts. And that comes just at a price of weight and size. But here it is. It's got a head end and a foot end. I don't know what the difference is, but they do say the head end is where the logo is. Like the other underquilt, it's got a primary suspension right here. It's got a secondary suspension right here, and what I call a tertiary suspension right here. This one of all of them has the biggest draft collars. They're huge, and they do a really good job. We've had all these underquilts on both the Chameleon and the War Bonnet Blackbird, and they fit fine. One thing we have noticed is on the underground quilts and the Zeppelin, it was a little bit harder to work them into these pack hooks on the Chameleon. They still got on there, so it was fine. But that's one thing we noticed. So this is the Zeppelin 20 degree. It's really good. It's fantastic. It's just big and bulky, but it's really durable and it's super warm. So yeah, that's our third and final one.
All right, so hopefully you learned something, and this will help when you're making your decision. These are three great underquilts with different pros and cons to them. I mean, if you're into a minimal, some weight savings, want a more minimalistic underquilt, the Revolt's for you. If you like something a little bit more luxury, maybe the underground quilts one is right for you with the nice draft collars.
And right in between is the Incubator. The Incubator is a perfect mix of the Revolt and the Zeppelin. It's just in the middle in terms of size. It's got draft collars like the Zeppelin does, but it's much more compressible and packable compared to the Zeppelin. Not as compressible as the Revolt. So it's all about, do you want to sacrifice packability and weight for maybe warmth or loft or anything like that? I'm using the Incubator right now because it's slightly more packable than the Zeppelin, but the Zeppelin is a great underquilt. I really like draft collars, so I don't think I'd get a Revolt or something like that. But if you're not hiking in the winter a lot or you don't need draft collars, maybe you get a Revolt or something like that.
I've never had an issue being cold in the Revolt. But you know, I see the advantage of draft collars.
Yeah. So that's it. Those are the underquilts we have used. We've been using them for about 1.5 years now, and they're all great. And thanks for watching.